Hello, everybody. I hope you're doing well today. What we're going to do is go ahead and I wanted to kind of wrap up our study on Andrew Jackson. In our class yesterday, we did like an introductory overview of Andrew Jackson. We saw the Daily Bell Ringer. And like I told you in class, I really like that guy on the Daily Bell Ringer because he gives a very good overview of things that helps us out. Sorry, as I move myself around here on the screen a little bit. The Daily Bell Ringer gives us some great resources there that allows us to kind of get an overview of the topic that we are learning about. So yesterday in our lesson, we began looking at Andrew Jackson. If you'll recall, the standards that we are focused on are 8.45, examine the importance of the elections of 1824 and 1828, including the corrupt bargain, the spoils system, and Jackson democracy. 8.46, examine President Andrew Jackson's actions regarding the Bank of the U.S. and the nullification crisis, and analyze the effects of these events on the nation. Our essential question for this lesson has been, what was the actions, or I'm sorry, let me read that again. Why was the election of 1824 and 1828 important? And how did Andrew Jackson deal with the issues facing his presidency? Our objectives for this lesson have been, I can examine Jackson's war on the Bank of the U.S., analyze the effects of Jackson's actions regarding the banks of the U.S. Today, our agenda is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to go through and kind of finish out a couple of things here. We're not going to do the quiz today, obviously, because we're not live in class. I'm not going to replay the Daily Bell Ringer because we did that yesterday in class. I'll briefly remind you of a few key things on 1824, 1828 election. We'll look at policies, but I really want to focus on this idea of tariffs. And then I also want to focus on Andrew Jackson's war on the banks. So when we come back together in the next class, we'll focus on this breakout room activity. All right, if you'll recall the election of 1824, this is where we see John Quincy Adams is elected president, even though Andrew Jackson had received 99 of the electoral votes. Sorry, I'm trying to readjust my screen here. And we saw that John Quincy Adams only got 84 electoral votes. And then, as we learned, it went to the House of Representatives. And thanks to Henry Clay going around and making deals with people, we see John Quincy Adams was elected in 1824. Now, again, if you were a fan of Andrew Jackson and you had voted for him, and your feelings are you probably witnessed the election being stolen from you. Okay? A couple of things there. We saw that in 1828, 4 years later, Andrew Jackson runs again. This time, he beats John Quincy Adams. And Jackson is our first president elected west of the Appalachian Mountains. He's very popular, not just very wealthy. We saw on the screen here that west of the Appalachian Mountains, that's the Tennessee area. Jackson is kind of from the frontier area, so a lot of the folks in the South could relate to Andrew Jackson, and they liked him a lot. Okay? His policies, he had this attitude of the spoil system. And that means that if I win, I can make all the changes I want to make. So, for example, if the past president has people that work for him that are still in Washington, D.C., making important decisions, then I won, so I can put into office whomever I want to. And so he fired 200 people that had worked for John Quincy Adams, and he put in his own people. That may be a good idea. It may not. We'll look at that. But Jackson was also in favor of a very limited federal government, and he's also not afraid to use his power as president. All right, and many people feared this. They thought, oh no, He's very similar to a king. His view was, no, I'm not a king, I'm the president. All right, I want to focus on this right here. This is the tariffs. Let me adjust this thing out a little bit more. Okay, the tariffs of abomination. So as we see on the screen, I'm going to move up here real quick. In 1828, there was a tariff placed on foreign goods. That means if I wanted to order items from another country, I could do that, but when those things came to North America, there would be a 25% tax added to whatever that product is that I had ordered. So for example, you'll see this in just a minute. Let's say if I ordered a roll of cloth that had been made in England and it's $4. Guys, that's a lot of money in those days, okay? So I order it, it's $4. But when it comes to the United States, they add 25% onto that. So let's say they add another dollar to it. Now it's $5, okay? It gets kind of expensive. But here's the deal. What if I own a factory in the north and I'm making products up there? I can sell those that cloth and things for $4. Well, that kind of forces people to have to come and buy their cloth from me. It's cheaper that way. Okay? Andrew Jackson did not like this. He said that this, he said it benefited the North and hurt the South. South Carolina rejects and nullifies the tariffs. That means we don't approve of this. States' right doctrine, a doctrine and strategy in which the rights of the individual states are protected by the U.S. Constitution from interference by the federal government. Here's how that works. Let me show you this demonstration here. Hang on just a minute. All right, I had to pause the recording there. My dog was barking outside, so I had to take care of her. All right, so let's pick back up. So we have this cloth that is made in England at the cost of $4. It comes to America. They add a dollar, 25% tariff on $1 is added to the price. So now that cloth from England is $5. Well, I can get the same thing from a factory in the north that is $4. Okay, so the money will stay here in America. It's really kind of forcing people to buy American-made products. Well, the factories in the north, if this is the only place people can buy their products from, then the factories in the north can set a higher price if they want to. All right, so I want you to pause for just a minute here and think about a tariff. It says, what is a tariff? Well, we know that's a tax. Do you think these are a good idea? What are some of the positive things about a tariff, about taxes? What are the negative things? So I want you to think about those on your own. We'll talk about that in class. Now, you'll see this in Classkick, so I'll explain that to you a little bit more in just a little bit. But what you'll basically do is you're going to click on this link. I'll have all this set up for you. I want you to watch the video I'm doing now and then watch the video here and then answer these questions. A little bit more about tariffs. South Carolina threatened to withdraw from the Union. That means they are going to leave the United States if this tax stays in place. Jackson threatened to send the U.S. military to South Carolina. He said, "Oh no, you're not going to leave. You're not going to leave the Union. You're going to stay here. If you try to leave, then I'm going to send the military in, and you're going to have some problems." South Carolina said, "Okay, we will stay." Nullification crisis was a sectional crisis in 1832 to 1833. During the presidency of Andrew Jackson, which involved confrontation between South Carolina and the federal government. So when this happened, South Carolina and other states began to feel like, wait a minute, things are not fair. We have no say in anything. It's the federal government that makes all the decisions. This crisis ensued after South Carolina declared that the federal tariffs of 1828 and 1832 were unconstitutional and therefore null and void within the sovereign boundaries of their state. So South Carolina is saying, look, if we want to buy items from another country, we should be allowed to do that. This is our state has decided to do this. The federal government does not determine that for us. All right, so we've got Force Bill. We got Jackson here. Looks like he's getting ready to box the states. This is a really good depiction of that, kind of setting things in motion for us. Well, what do you think about this? If a state disagrees with a law made by the national government, do you think that state should have a right to refuse it? Well, what if the state law was unfair or oppressive? Okay, so what if like Tennessee had a law that's not fair? Should they have more power than the federal government? Or what if the federal government law is unfair to Tennessee? Okay. All right. So one of the most important things that happens during Andrew Jackson's time as president is he is really, really angry with the banks. First, they operate a payment system. So let's kind of talk about what banks do. They operate a payment system, and a modern economy cannot function well without an efficient payment system. We make most of our payment by writing checks, swiping credit cards issued by the bank or tied to them, and by paying bills via online banking. Most of the money stock of the country is in fact bank money. The rest of the currency is legal tender issued by the government, namely the Federal Reserve notes and coins. The second key function of the bank is financial intermediation, leading to investing the money we deposit with them or credit they themselves create. All right, so for example, if I have money, I go put it in the bank takes that money and they loan it out to other companies, and those companies will take that money to build things or whatever, but they pay back that money of mine with interest. Okay, and we'll talk more about that. Well, Andrew Jackson is not very happy about this. Okay, and so here's the way he deals with things. All right, banking, currency, and monetary policies was a source of great controversy in the early United States. In 1791, Congress established the original Bank of the United States, masterminded by the Treasury Secretary Andrew Hamilton. The bank would be able to lend the government money and safely hold its deposit, give Americans a uniform currency, and promote businesses and industry by extending credit. Together with Hamilton's other financial programs, it would help place the United States on equal financial footing with the nations of Europe. But support for the banks fell largely along sectional lines, with the Northern endorsement and Southern opposition. Among those who distrusted the banks of the United States was Andrew Jackson. The Tennessee war hero was elected president in 1828 as the champion of the common man. Jackson opposed the concentration of power in the hand of the powerful few. In the end, both the houses of Congress did pass a bill which extended the charter of the banks for an additional 15 years. 1 week later, July 10, 1832, Jackson returned the bill unsigned along with a message to Congress in which he announced his veto, declaring that the bank was unauthorized by the Constitution, subversive to the rights of states, and dangerous to the liberties of people. In his veto message, Jackson directly contradicted the Supreme Court's 1819 ruling in the McCulloch versus Maryland, which held that Bank of the United States was constitutional. He claimed the right for himself as president to judge its constitutionality, independence of Congress or the courts. The bank charter gave the institutions too much power over national financial markets. If we must have a bank with private stockholders, every consideration of sound policy and every impulse of American, I can't read the rest of it. It got cut off here. Let's see. Let's see if I can get the rest of it here. Banking currencies and monetary policies was a source of great controversy in the early United States. In 1791, Congress established this bank, masterminded again by Alexander Hamilton. And, well, the thing got cut off there again, so we'll move on. Jackson believed that states should have the power to control the banking systems. But in the Supreme Court case McCulloch versus Maryland, the Supreme Court ruled that the national bank was constitutional. All right, so this diagram that we have here, this cartoon shows Andrew Jackson is at battle with an evil monster, and this monster kind of is represented of the government, and so he felt like he was at battle with the national bank and other things like that. I'll let you read this on your own, and we'll talk more about this part in class. All right, Jackson vetoes. That means the government, the Congress sends him a bill to sign. If he signs it, it becomes a law. He says absolutely no and vetoes it and sends it back to Congress. Jackson vetoes a bill that would give the national bank power to control all the country's money. Congress could not get the 2/3 vote. So, considering the issue the South had with tariffs, Jackson passed, and then Jackson's war with the banks. How do you think the people of the U.S. felt about Andrew Jackson? So we're going to start to see they are kind of angry with him. All right. With the removal of the bank as a regulating force, state banks began printing currency and lending money in exorbitant amounts, the resulting high inflation. And Jackson's policies favoring hard currency, gold or silver, led many investors to panic and many banks to close due to insufficient reserves in a financial crisis known as the Panic of 1837. We'll talk about that one too. Jackson's Democratic successor, Martin Van Buren, proposed the establishment of a new independent treasury system, which would fulfill Jackson's goal of separating the nation's finances from its government. Repealed by Whigs in 1841 after Van Buren's loss to William Henry Harrison, the Independent Treasury Act was signed back into law by Democratic President James K. Polk in 1846. The independent treasury system would function until 1914, when it was repealed by the Federal Reserve. How has banking changed over the last century? We now see cryptocurrency. We can now bank on the internet. I could use my phone, punch a few buttons, and access my account where my money is, pay bills, and so forth. And let me ask you this question. Do you think eventually we'll do away with the dollar bill and paper money and coins? What do you guys think banking will look like in the future? If you talk to older people about cryptocurrency, many of them will say, I just don't understand it. I don't know what that stuff is. All right. So what we're going to do is I'll show you this announcement real quick. This is what we're going to be testing on. You do have a unit test on Friday. It's going to cover 8.44, 845, 846, and 47 and 48. Okay, so please make sure you study these concepts right here. Okay? All right, my friends, thank you for your time. I know that was a little bit long, but we'll dive into more detail in class next time I see you. Hope you have a good rest of the day. Make sure you sign in to D2L to watch this and that you complete the activity that I have posted for you. Have a good day.